So we're live. Okay. Ooh, I actually have a gavel.
Whoa.
I've never had a gavel at one of these meetings. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the January 19th, 2023 SBCAG board meeting. I'm Janelle Osborne, and I am the chair of SBCAG this year. Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Thank you, Chair Osborne. For roll call, Directors Williams? Capps?
Here.
Thank you. Hartman? Nelson? Lavanino?
Here.
Infante?
Here.
Julian? King?
Here.
Oh, sorry. It's suddenly over here.
Ventriloquism.
Patino? Here. Perotti? Here. Clark?
Here.
Friedman?
Here.
And Chair Osborne.
Here.
Do you want me to go over Zoom reminders?
Absolutely. And then we'll do the pledge.
Just a couple of Zoom reminders for all the panelists. Please remember to mute your mic when you're not speaking. If you'd like to comment, please use the raise your hand button. If you're an attendee, you will be in listen only mode. All attendees will remain in listen only mode unless muted by SBCAG staff to provide public comment. Comments from the public are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. The public will not be able to share their video or screen. When public comment is called for an agenda item, attendees may use your raise your hand button to express desire to provide public comment for that item, and you will be unmuted when it's your turn to talk. Those calling on the phone can dial *9 to raise your hand.
Thank you. Let's rise and say the pledge. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Madam Clerk, did we have any public comment on subjects within our jurisdiction that are not included on this agenda?
Chair Osborne, I see some attendees. Mr. Nick Johnson and Sizet Santa Barbara. Are you two on to do public comment? Mr. Johnson, were you public comment?
I don't have any public comment. I'm here as a representative for the city of Goleta if needed.
Okay, thank you.
Any public comment in South County?
Let me see if this Sizet at Santa Barbara Gov. Did you want to provide public comment?
No, ma'am,
Okay.
for the ALUP item. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We did have a gentleman call this morning or yesterday to request public comment. I called him back, left a message that he could provide public comment. And I don't, oh, this might be him right here. Hi, is this Mr. Tim Mahoney? Nope, doesn't look like.
All right. Anyone here in the North County chambers?
No request for public comment.
All right. Thank you so very much for that. We will move on to item number 4, which is our closed session. Council Susan McKenzie will read it into record.
Thank you, Chair and Directors. Today, the board is agendized to discuss one item in closed session, conference with real property negotiators under Government Code 54956.8. The agency negotiators are SBCAG's Executive Director, Margie Kern, and Fred Luna, Director of Project Delivery and Construction. The agenda identifies the 11 properties subject to negotiations and the negotiating party for each property. The anticipated time is about 20 minutes, and I would just check with the clerk to ensure there's no public comment on closed session before we recess.
All right. Any public comment on closed session?
Chair Osborne and Council McKenzie, no.
All right. Thank you. We will reconvene after we conclude our closed session. For those of you that are on Zoom, you will need to log out of this and log into the other Zoom meeting link that you have been sent. And for those of you in South County, log in from your remote location. And we will see you again in hopefully 20 minutes.
We're gonna have to end this.
You get the regular meeting for the San Bernardino County area governments and Ms. Council, do you have a report out?
Chair and directors, today the board met in closed session to discuss one item, conference with real property negotiators per government code 54956.8. The board took no reportable action.
All right, we'll move on to item 5, approval of the consent calendar. Madam Clerk. Awesome. Okay. Thank you for that clarity. All right. Would anyone like to pull an item from consent calendar?
Madam Chair, we're not hearing you quite. We can hear, but not very well. So I think we've got a
That's
technical.
correct.
I'll do that.
You're okay. Well,
Better.
that's what I asked you before we started. Who's controlling that mute button? All right. We will go back to, would anyone like to move anything from the consent calendar?
Move for approval.
Anyone online or anybody in South County?
This is Director Hartman. The call box.
Aye.
I'll read that into the record.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to read that in the record, which is item 5I, Santa Barbara County Call Box Maintenance Consent to Assign Agreement. 5I1, acting as the Santa Barbara County Service Authority for Freeway Emergencies, approve and authorize the chair to execute a joint request for consent to assign by Case Emergency Systems, Inc. and Nightscope, Inc., which would assign the service agreement for maintenance of the highway call box system between SBCAG and Case Emergency Systems to Nightscope, including all rights and obligations contained therein. And 5I2, after approval of the recommended action 1, approve and authorize the chair to execute an amendment number 3 to the agreement for services for maintenance of the highway call box system between SBCAG and Nightscope, Inc., which extends the period of performance for 4 years and 5 months for revised end date of June 30th, 2027, increases in funding by $141,033 for revised total amount not to exceed $501,033.
Thank you. Start with any questions we might have regarding that item. Director Hartman?
Yes. So I gather this is just a contract for maintenance, but I just would like to get a report on. At one point, we wanted to reduce the call boxes. We need them in certain areas where there's not good cell coverage, but most people have cell phones at this point. So we were going to take some out and reap some economic benefit, I think. And so I just wondered, have we reduced the numbers and have we realized any economic benefit? And at one point, we were talking about coming to the board about how that money would be spent.
Madam Chair, Madam Director Hartman, through the chair, we did reduce the number of call boxes and we have realized of savings. We are using that funding currently for the traffic solutions implementation of reducing trips by promoting carpooling, vanpooling, and bicycling and whatnot. So I can have, since this item is just on the contract, we would have to put it on an agenda to discuss in detail of what is going on with the SAFE program. So I can put that on a future agenda for your consideration.
Okay, thank you for that.
All right. Does that answer all the questions?
Madam Chair, if we can get a roll call on item A.
All right. Item 5A.
I'll move A.
5A is the COVID-19 reaffirming. I gotta find my agenda to read it into the record. Hold on. 5A, reconsider the circumstances of the COVID-19 state of emergency. I have to know this by heart. 5A1, reconsider the circumstances of the COVID-19 state of emergency. 5A2, reconsider whether state or local officials continue to impose or recommend measures to promote social distancing. 5A3, find that the SBCAG board has reconsidered the circumstances of the state of emergency and that state or local officials continue to impose or recommend measures to promote social distancing. And 5A4, direct staff to continue to notice and hold meetings as remote hearings consistent with government code 54953E3.
So we will entertain a motion for 5A and a second and do an independent roll call vote on that and then follow up with the rest of consent calendar. Can I get a motion on 5A?
Move A.
Hartman seconds.
All right. Bettino and then Hartman.
For the roll call, Director Williams,
Aye.
Capps,
Aye.
Hartman,
Aye.
Nelson,
No.
Lavanino,
Aye.
Infante,
Aye.
Julian, King,
Aye.
Tino,
Aye.
Perotti,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Friedman,
Aye.
and Chair Osborne.
Aye.
Motion passes 11-1.
All right. I will now entertain a motion for items 5B through I for the rest of consent calendar.
Move for approval.
Second.
Who is the maker of the motion?
King.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Remember, I'm in the room.
You're so date. So you're so.
I'm in the room.
Okay, for the roll call, Director Williams,
Aye.
Capps,
Aye.
Hartman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Lavanino,
Aye.
Infante,
Aye.
Julian, King,
Aye.
Patino,
Aye.
Perotti,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Friedman,
Aye.
and Chair Osborne.
Aye.
Motion passes 12-0.
Thank you. We'll now move on to items under 6, review and discuss and action items. Item A is E-Bike Awareness Day, Thursday, January 19th, 2023, today, and adoption of a resolution proclaiming E-Bike Awareness Day, January 19th, 2023. And I have the proclamation to read into record. Anything before I do so? All right. Here we go. Whereas many people, young and old, are discovering the joys of riding an electric assisted bicycle, e-bike for short, and whereas there are many benefits of e-bikes, including that they can help to cover longer riding distances, climb steeper terrain, and travel at higher speeds, enabling users to travel by bike instead of car, thereby helping to encourage physical activity and reduce traffic congestion and pollution. And whereas studies show that bicyclist safety typically increases when there are more bicyclists on the road. However, a rapid increase in less experienced, higher speed bicyclists can result in more collisions with pedestrians and other road uses, leading to injury and sometimes even death. And whereas in an effort to improve public safety, the state of California has passed e-bike safety laws that regulate who and where each type of e-bike can lawfully be ridden, and that riders 17 years of age and under must always wear a helmet. And whereas e-bikes can bring joy and a sense of freedom, but that no matter what type of bike you ride, some collisions can be avoided by practicing common sense safety, including 1, checking your battery, brakes, chain, and tire pressure before you ride. 2, wearing a helmet and visible clothing, whether you are a rider or passenger. 3, watching your speed by riding slowly and respectfully on multi-use paths or where pedestrians are present. 4, avoiding riding unpredictably and be sure to use hand signals and keep eye contact to communicate your movements with other vehicles. 5, avoiding texting, talking on the phone, or listening to loud music while riding. And 6, obeying traffic signs, signals, and roadway laws just as cars are required to. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Santa Barbara County Association of Government proclaims Thursday, January 19th, 2023 as E-Bike Safety Awareness Day and encourages residents to learn more about this emerging popular activity. Residents can test ride e-bikes, learn more safety tips, and enter to win an e-bike and other great prizes on this day from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. on the State Street Promenade at De La Guerra Street in downtown Santa Barbara. If passed, it will be adopted today. And now we need to ask if there are any public comments on this item.
Chair Osborne received no prior requests for public comment, and I see no attendees requesting public comments.
All right. Anybody in South County?
Could we hear
Anyone of
from
you?
staff, from Mr. Epperson?
Hi there. I'm not sure if is this mic working?
Yeah, we can hear you, Kent.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for this proclamation. We are very excited for this event that's happening this evening on State Street. It was mentioned in the proclamation. We have, about 15 or 20 different bike shops and organizations that are going to be there to help us with this endeavor. Our mission is to raise the bar for e-bike safety. We have a lot of new riders that we're excited about, younger riders and older riders that tend to gravitate towards these e-bikes. But with that comes some inexperience with riding and with the nuances of the higher speeds, the heavier bikes, the braking. There's certainly other things that people need to consider. And so we're going to have a great skills course, and people can enter an online safety pledge. So we encourage people to go to the trafficsolutions.org/e-bike safety, and they can do an online pledge, watch a safety video. There's a 5-minute safety video that they can watch. And the two other things one other thing I wanted to alert you all to, there's going to be an e-bike community ride and class that we're really gearing towards families. And that will be on the 12th, Sunday, the 12th of February, 11 to 2 o'clock. And that is going to be hosted and put on by Move Santa Barbara County. And so if you know of people, especially some of the youth, that have these new e-bikes, to really encourage the families to come out together and do the ride and receive some basic skills. So with that, I do have a quick 30-second PSA that I'd like to share, if that would be okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, I've got it on my end, and I'm going to go ahead and play it now.
Electric bikes can bring you joy and freedom, but there are some important safety practices that can make your ride smooth and accident-free. Join us for E-Bike Awareness Day on Thursday, January 19th from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. on the State Street Promenade in downtown Santa Barbara. Test ride amazing e-bikes, learn safety tips from the pros, enter to win an e-bike and other great prizes. Visit trafficsolutions.org/e-bike safety for more information.
And that is all I have today. So thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions? I see Director Capps raising her
Yes.
hand.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your, especially your comments related to youth. That's the nature of my questions. It's a common debate amongst parents, I know, of when you allow your child to get an e-bike, because it's quite scary knowing that they're basically out in traffic at speeds similar to cars. So I just encourage you with what you're doing already with the class, if there's outreach to the schools, if I can assist in any way, I'm happy to do that, because again, it's a constant fear/empowerment conversation with young children who are, really clamoring to get these bikes and the freedom that goes along with it. So happy to help make connections if need be.
Madam Chair and Director Capps, thank you for asking that question. That's the question I wanted asked, and obviously you have some great connections in that arena. I will mention that in Carlsbad and Laguna Beach, both those two communities are very much leading the charge in terms of youth bike education, e-bike education, and we'd like to follow their lead. One of the things that they're doing in both of those locations is on, I believe it's junior high and high school campuses, students that want to bring an e-bike to school, which is great and highly encouraged, they actually have to go through a safety class, and that's put on by the police department. And it's short, it's not too long, it's like a, 2-hour class or something like that. And we would love to do that here. So if there's an interest by the school district to institute this sort of class, this is the opportunity, and they're a captive audience, to really instill some basic bike education. And it actually is applicable to all bicyclists. So it has a really nice ripple effect as well.
I think there would be interest, although I can't speak for the school district, but not just here in Santa Barbara, but throughout the county. And just encourage you too to do outreach with Santa Barbara Middle School, which is based on cycling. And I also just appreciate that you're modeling off of what other cities are doing successfully and seeing if we can do that here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Director Perotti?
No question, but, go ahead.
Oh, should I go?
Please do. You're next, and we'll go back to to Director Williams.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Mr. Epperson. We at the City of Goleta also issued a proclamation last Tuesday at our council meeting. And I'm especially pleased to see an outreach for e-safety with our youth. And, my philosophy is you train the youth and they will train their parents to also ride safely. So it just that's the ripple effect. So I thank you very much. I'm hoping that we can work with the Goleta school districts, but also as a suggestion, why not also reach out to some of our local, if they have a PTA, Parent Teacher Association, for getting the word out as well. So that's just another suggestion, but I totally support this idea. I've been concerned. I have seen, I so encourage our youth to bike, but I'm also seeing some dangerous moves on the roadway that just cringe when I see it. So thank you so much.
Director Williams, back to you.
My question is just that do we on our transit services that we provide and that we partner with VCTC on allow e-bikes, on them? And do we have a limited capacity? My understanding is now the new VCTC Coastal Express, we can pretty much take as many bikes as we want because of the undercarriage, but maybe you could talk about that.
Director Williams and Madam Chair. Yes, absolutely. And I think that is one of the magic combinations here, because when we have the last mile, first mile taken care of by e-bike, it becomes not the first and last mile, but maybe the first 10 miles and the last 10 miles. So we can really expand the reach of transit service. And yes, all of the transit services do allow e-bikes. I will say that with the new e-bikes, the fat tire e-bikes, and some of the really heavy e-bikes, those in some cases cannot fit in those front bike racks. And so that would be the limitation. So one of the things that we're trying to do as we do the Easy Bike Project and demo these bikes is to highlight the bikes that are lightweight, that easily fit in those racks, so that people are aware that those are the bikes you want if you want to combine your trip by transit.
And I just think this is really important, is the idea of being able to use this as a tool, not just for fun, but a tool for commuting. The potential of training and biking, taking the train, especially after we have a new fancy station in Goleta, and that location is incredible, has incredible potential for being a train to bike to work or to UCSB, and the potential. I also think in Santa Barbara, as someone who used to live in the Oak Park, San Roque area, I would go downtown to work and head on back up. Very easy commute. Really, kind of no real reason you need a car for doing that if you can do it in a bike, preferably a bike, but if not a bike, an e-bike, and if not a normal e-bike, a cargo e-bike, right? There's just a lot of options for people's different lifestyles out there, and it sure helps the gentleman to my right and the whole city council be able to provide streets and roads and congestion-free locations if there's some of trips that are being handled with e-bikes instead of with cars.
Thank you.
Director Hartman?
Thank you. Mr. Epperson, I just wanted to follow up on the school education. Is that something that Traffic Solutions and you are doing, or is that something that MOVE is doing?
Generally speaking, Director Hartman, generally speaking, MOVE is the primary agency or organization that works directly with the schools. They're certainly on board with this idea. We've been working closely with them on this e-bike awareness campaign. So yes, we're really hoping that they can take the lead, but we certainly can provide a support role.
Well, I think what you're hearing from a lot of the directors up here is that we think this is really important. And if we could play a role in bridging to superintendents of the different schools, I think that I have found on safe routes to schools that that's kind of the best way to go. And so just you could offer our support to them.
So noted. Thank you for that.
Any other questions of staff or comments?
I do have one question. Is there going to be, when you do this training for these people, is there going to be an emphasis on what's legal and what's not legal? Like, I'm certain that it hasn't changed since I was in law enforcement, that you can't ride these on the sidewalk. And I saw an example of that when I was down in Long Beach, is that there's a lot of people that ride these on the sidewalk through crowds, you know, and that can be dangerous for people. My son actually got hit by somebody on a bicycle that was on the sidewalk. So I guess my question is, are you going to emphasize where you can and cannot ride these?
Madam Chair and Director, yes, absolutely. That is front and center. And there are actually a lot of unique laws that relate to e-bikes. There's 3 classifications, 1, 2, and 3. 1 goes 20 miles an hour and does not have a throttle. 2 has a throttle, it goes 20 miles an hour, and 3 has no throttle, but can go up to 28 miles an hour. And the class 3 bicycles actually are not allowed on multi-use paths or even bike lanes, believe it or not. They're really designed to be mixed in with traffic, and a lot of people are not aware of that. And so that's one of the key points that we want to educate people about. But in general, reminding bicyclists that they're a vehicle on the road like any other vehicle, and they actually need to adhere to all of the same rules. They have the responsibility and the rights of a vehicle. And that means in most cases, not riding on sidewalks. There are cases where younger riders are allowed in some jurisdictions on the sidewalks, but in general, that's not something we encourage. It's a much safer endeavor for someone to ride in the street, and in some cases even take a lane rather than trying to cower on the side by the curb where they're not as visible. So absolutely, that is one of the main points. And there is a 5-minute e-bike safety video that we require people to watch as part of this safety pledge, this online safety pledge, and we'll be also airing that on the government access channels as well. And that does touch on some of the key laws that you've mentioned. So thank you for bringing that up.
Any other hands raised?
Chair Osmond, see no hands raised.
All right. I know we did check for public comment already, but just in case all of that discussion led to any additional concerns for public comment.
Chair Osmond, I see no attendees raising their hand for public comment.
All right. Well, Kent well knows the bike I ride, has ridden with me, and he may or may not know that I converted it to an electric bike so I could continue riding my very cool commuter bike. And he is correct. This conversion allows me to set what class of bicycle it is with how much I allow the power to come through, as far as having speed limit set in the software. And so I chose not to go above 20 miles per hour because I did try it at the higher speed, and it was like being on a motorcycle, which I do enjoy, but a motorcycle requires a much different helmet and much different safety rules. So we took that software back down to nothing more than 20 miles per hour. So they can be very exciting, a lot of fun. I've used it on days where I don't have additional trips to ride. A 10-minute car ride is to the city hall from my home is now less than a 10-minute bicycle ride as well, based on being able to go 20 miles per hour and choose my route. So it is something that is part of a plan to reduce the impact of vehicles. And I see that training is the way to go, especially with our youth. So I thank you all for supporting that.
Chair
I will entertain a
Osborne?
motion. Yes.
Could I just make one quick question for Mr. Epperson? I think for Director King, it would be especially interesting to know what the CHP is working on their manual.
Thank you, Director Hartman and Madam Chair. The CHP, through an assembly bill which was passed last summer, charged and requested that the CHP develop an e-bike safety course and online materials. And they're developing that material right now, and they will be rolling that out sometime this summer. So we look forward to seeing that material and using that material to do our education programs. And I understand that our local KUIT is interested in actually putting together some safety videos for the CHP for that very purpose. So it's exciting that now the CHP is involved in this really important topic as well.
That is some really great information. So what we need to do is now adopt our resolution. And so I'll entertain a motion to adopt the e-bike awareness day resolution.
Tino, so move.
And I second. Caps.
And Cap seconds.
Director Williams,
Aye.
Caps,
Aye.
Hartman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Lavanina,
Aye.
Infante,
Aye.
Julian, King,
Aye.
Patino,
Aye.
Parodi,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Friedman,
Aye.
and Chair Osborne.
Aye.
Motion passes 12-0.
Thank you. Item 5B.
Item 5B, committee appointments. 5B1, appoint one delegate and one alternate to the California Association of Councils of Governments, CalCog. 5B2, appoint one delegate and one alternate to the Los Angeles, San Diego, San Luis Obispo Rail Coordinating Agency, LOSAN. 5B3, appoint one delegate and one alternate to the Coast Rail Coordinating Council, which I think is a 6. 6B4, appoint one member and one alternate to the Calvans Board of Directors. 6B5, appoint members to the Highway 154 Safety Committee. 6B6, appoint members to the SBCAG Executive Committee, Chair, Vice Chair, Immediate Past Chair, Chairs of North County Subregional and South Coast Subregional.
Thank you. Ms. Kern, is there any information you'd like to share with us before we start this process?
No, Madam Chairperson, it's all on you.
all in my lap, no problem. So what I'd like to suggest as we go through this process is we go to each organization and each committee or organization, discuss who the appointees might be, make that nomination, and then take a vote at the very end. All right, you're good with that? Okay. So the first is the CalCog, the California Association of Councils of Governments. Historically, it is the chair and the vice chair. I am happy to serve as the member with nominating Vice Chair Lavanino as the alternate if he's willing to accept it.
Well, I would say, honestly, with the rest of the stuff I've got going on this year, unless you plan on being at all the meetings, I don't think I'm going to be able to travel anywhere. So if there's any travel involved, I would appoint somebody else. Otherwise, I'd be happy to serve if there's something I can do via Zoom or attend locally.
All right. Is there anyone else who might be interested in the alternate position, just in case you're interested in it?
I would be interested in the alternate position.
All right. So we have Director Patino, who is willing to serve, because I have a lot on my plate as well, and there might be an opportunity that I need the alternate to attend because a lot of meetings are going back in person. So thank you, Director Lavanino, for your honesty, and thank you, Director Patino, for being willing to step up. All right, so the next one is LOSAN, Los Angeles, San Diego, San Luis Obispo Rail Corridor Agency. Currently, the appointed position is open because the individual got elected to the assembly and left us. So I have heard that Director Perotti, who served as the, would like to serve on this. So I am happy to ask her if she'd like to be chair and be the member appointed, not chair, member appointed from our group, and then ask the floor
Madam
for
Chair.
an alternate. Yes.
Madam Chair, I've been serving as alternate for
Okay.
the Losan Board, and I'm happy to continue on that if Mayor Perotti gives me a meeting or two to go to a year.
Paula, what is your wish? Would you like to be?
I actually would like to be an alternate. If that's possible. I like to
I
learn.
try and promote everybody.
Okay,
right?
that works.
Right to
That's
the
fine
top.
then too. Good.
Right. All right. Director Williams, would you like to be the appointee
Sure.
for this year? All right.
Great.
So we have our appointee and a new alternate for LOSAN. Coast Rail Coordinating Council, or CRC. Currently, the appointee is Director Williams, and our alternate is Director Rouse. Director Williams, any interest in also being that appointee, or would you like to step away from that?
I can continue it, but if someone else wants to do it, that's fine too. It'll be a little more interesting now that it won't all be online. So it'll be a little bit more of a commitment. Typically, they meet in Monterey.
Is there anyone interested in being that?
Yes, and I like the rail system, but I think that hopefully we can work with the lowering the cost and increasing the amount of travel by train. If you really want to take cars off the road, if it was more affordable for people. I mean, to go to LA, it's about $40 a person. And I mean, people are going to go, well, I'll spend $50 for gas, or I'm going to spend $120 for the three of us to go to Los Angeles. So I'd like to work with the rail people to see if you can increase. And I know that there is I've read some things that they're trying to increase commuter trains. So I'd like to work with them to do that.
All right. So I would take your willingness to be the appointee, and since he's not here to defend himself, leave Director Rouse as the alternate. That is the appointment recommendation at this point. So that gives you some relief, Director Williams, and letting you focus on LOSAN.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great.
All right. CalVans. Director Julian is the current member, with Director Hartman as the alternate. I realize that Director Julian is dealing with the flood. I know he enjoys this work and would like to continue it, so I would recommend he remain. Director Hartman, would you like to continue as the alternate?
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Director Nelson was speaking at that moment.
Was that Director Nelson? Sorry, you're hard to hear. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, I apologize for that. I don't know how strongly Director Hartman wants to be on that, but I would be interested in also serving as potentially an alternate.
You're welcome to it.
All righty. So Director Nelson, you now are the alternate. Thank you, Director Hartman. All right. The Highway 154 Safety Committee. This is historically made up by those communities that are directly impacted by that. Of those members, Director Hartman and Director Perotti are still on our committee, and as a result, likely to remain unless they have alternates they want to serve. That leaves Director Capps, Director King, and Director Infante as those communities needing representation. So if you're all willing to serve, Director Perotti, you have your hand up?
Yes, I'm willing to stay on.
All right, great.
I'm willing to stay on also. This is Infante.
All right, Director King. All right, and Director Capps for Director Hart's position.
Sure.
Okay.
Chair Osborne, if I may, this committee meets maybe once a year, and it's really public information about improvements that have occurred on the 154.
Okay. So not as difficult a gig as those of you might think it might be. All right. And finally, we have the executive committee. It is historically the vice chair, the chair, the immediate past chair, the North County sub chair, and the South County sub chair. So that would be myself as chair of the SBCAG this year. Vice chair is Director Lavanino. Our immediate past chair is Director Williams. Our North County sub chair is Director Lavanino, and our South County sub chair is Director Clark. That leaves us with a 4-member body rather than a 5-member body. So is there someone who would like to serve on it as a tiebreaker? If you're interested in serving on the executive committee as a way to help us prevent ties if needed.
I can do that.
Director Patino has volunteered to be our tiebreaker. So we will add Director Patino in order to have a 5-member body instead of just a 4-member body, since Director Lavanino is holding 2 positions in this scenario. All right. So any clarity on Madam Clerk, did you catch all of those things?
Chair Osborne, I did. If
All
you'd like
right.
me to repeat them, I can.
Only
It's up to you.
if the board needs the repeating. Is there anyone who would like any of those nominations repeated? All right. Do we have any public comment on any of this?
Chair Osborne, we have no public comment.
All right. Any board discussion? All right. I will accept a motion to accept all of these.
So moved, Chair Chair
Patino.
Patino.
Director Patino. Yep. And a second.
Second.
All right. Director King seconds, and roll call vote, please.
Director Williams,
Aye.
Caps,
She stepped out for just a second.
thank you. Hartman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Lavanino,
Aye.
Infante,
Aye.
Julian, King,
Aye.
Patino,
Aye.
Perotti,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Friedman,
Aye.
and Chair Osborne.
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you. Thank you all for your willingness to go above and beyond the normal service with these committees and commissions. All right, item 6C.
Item 6C, Airport Land Use Compatibility Plans. 6C1, after consideration of the proposal final negative declaration, together with the initial study and any comments received during the public review process, and on the basis of the whole record. 6C1A, make the required secret findings as included in attachment 1 of the staff report. 6CB, adopt and the final negative declaration includes attachment 2 of the staff report. 6C2, adopt resolution 2302, adopting the Lompoc Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan. 6C3, adopt resolution 2303, adopting the Santa Barbara ALUCP. 6C4, adopt resolution 2304, adopting the Santa Maria ALUCP. 6C5, adopt resolution 2305, adopting the Santa Ynez ALUCP. And 6C6, adopt resolution 2306, adopting the Vandenberg Space Force Base ALUCP. And 6C7, authorize the executive director to submit the adopted resolutions and ALUCPs to the California Department of Transportation Divisions of Aeronautics.
Thank you for that, Madam Clerk. And Mr. Becker, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Chair and Directors. My name is Mike Becker. I'm the Director of Planning, and with me today is Andrew Orfila, who is the primary Airport Land Use Commission staff, and he's the subject matter expert on all things airport land use compatibility planning, and he's here to help with any questions should we have any. Today's presentation's a bit of a balance, typically because we presented the draft plans to the board in November of last year. When we seek adoption, we would normally put it on the consent calendar, but since we have some new board members and there's a couple of things, a couple of minor things have changed, we're doing a presentation today. Andrew, next slide, please. So this is just a bit of repeating what Terry just mentioned. I'll do it a lot shorter than that, but it's essentially to make the required California Environmental Quality Act or CEQA findings, which and adopt the negative declaration, which satisfies SBCAG's requirements through the California's environmental laws. And then adopt the series of resolutions, which in turn adopt the airport land use compatibility plans for each of the region's airports, which are also shown on the map there. Authorize us to submit the adopted plans and resolutions to Caltrans Division of Aeronautics. And finally, between November and today, we found actually between docketing and today, we found a small error in the plans. And we're asking that if there is a motion to adopt that, enable us to fix that small error. And I'll cover that a bit in the presentation. So Andrew, next slide. So ultimately what we're doing today is complying with the state's Aeronautics Act.
I need to interrupt you.
Chair
They're
Osborne?
not able to see the PowerPoint on Zoom.
Yep.
So we need to pause so the public can see the PowerPoint. Thank you.
And also, could you let us know what slide you're on, so if we're following it on our computers?
Sure.
I can't see it in South
We
County
can't see it
either.
in South County.
We are working on our technical issues here now. We were on slide number what?
3.
3.
Yeah, we're on slide 3.
I see it. It's up.
All right, we will start this again, being as we had some technical difficulties.
It does, yeah, it doesn't look like the right one. It's November 17th. It's a different one. They have a different one in them.
They have a different one. Oh, okay. So we're going to pause again because the wrong presentation is up on the screen.
Yeah. This project has been full of it.
The latex not ready to be done. We're approaching. No, it's delayed.
They're doing some training. It's still, it's trying to put the focus on the green little box. Oh, she got it.
All right, now we have the appropriate presentation live, and we will try this again. Mr. Becker?
All right, thank you, Chair. And Sarkis just mentioned that we were experiencing a bit of turbulence with the presentation here. Okay, so here, I'll start over. So and as I mentioned, today's presentation is somewhat of a balance because we presented the draft plans in November that normally would come back on consent for adoption. However, recognizing there's several new board members and there are a couple minor changes, we are doing a brief presentation today. So next slide, to slide 2. And this slide just repeated what Terry mentioned. The actions that we're requesting today is to satisfy our requirements through California's Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, adopt a series of resolutions, which in turn adopt the airport land use compatibility plans for the 5 airports shown on the map, being Santa Maria, Vandenberg Space Force Base, Lompoc, St. Inez, and Santa Barbara. Authorizing us to submit the resolutions and the plans to Caltrans Division of Aeronautics, and then authorizing us to fix a small error that we found in the Santa Maria and Santa Barbara. SMX and SBA are the call signs for those 2 airports in a table, and I'll cover that in the presentation towards the end. So next slide, please, Andrew, and this is slide 3. So this is just an outline of what I'm going to discuss today. I'm going to give a brief purpose and overview of what is an airport land use compatibility plan. I'm going to briefly discuss the timeline of what led to us being here today. I'll touch on what has changed since we were last presenting this item to the board in November. I'll talk a bit specifically about the Lompoc Airport because there's some concerns raised recently about the rural classification of the Lompoc Airport. And then I will discuss the small error that we identified between docketing and today for the Santa Maria and Santa Barbara airports. And then after that, we're happy to take any questions. So next slide, to slide 4, Andrew. So ultimately, what we're doing here today is complying with the state's Aeronautics Act. And the stated purpose of the Aeronautics Act is to protect the public's interest in aeronautics and aeronautical progress. The act requires a land use commission for each region. That commission in Santa Barbara County is you, it's a shared responsibility with you being a member of the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments as a board member. The bulk of the responsibility is to protect public health and safety by limiting the growth of non-compatible land uses around airports. It is through these airport land use compatibility plans that we identify what is compatible and where. The Aeronautics Act requires Caltrans, through their Division of Aeronautics, to develop a handbook to guide the process. That handbook is the medium between the state statute and these plans. And the handbook serves as our primary purpose and guidance, or primary resource and guiding document when developing these plans. While you have a role in aviation safety, it is not without limitation. The Airport Land Use Commission has no authority over existing land uses, no matter how incompatible with the airport operations they may be. We also, the Airport Land Use Commission has no control over airports, and it's actually quite the opposite. We respond to how the airports operate. And finally, we have no control over federal lands, state lands, or tribal lands. The Federal Aviation Administration does have a small role related to runway protection zones, which I'll get into, as well as airspace protection. And Caltrans has a role in this for state lands and certain sensitive land uses, such as schools. Next slide, to slide 5, Andrew. And a quick history lesson on how we got here today. SBCAG became the Airport Land Use Commission when it separated from the county in 1990. And shortly after that, we republished the plan that currently exists in 1993. I dug and dug, and you can only dig so deep into the past to find out when that was actually prepared. It was in the 80s, but we republished it in 1993. It is out of date. In 2010, SBCAG sought to update the 1993 plan and received a grant from Caltrans to update the plan for the region. And at that point, it was one airport land use compatibility plan for all the airports. And now they're all separated. But we received a grant. However, that grant did not cover the environmental review. So we updated the plans to contemporary standards. However, we did not have funding to continue the process towards adoption because we needed to satisfy the state's environmental laws, and we didn't have funding to do so. So they were shelved. In 2016, we received a second grant from Caltrans to complete the environmental review. However, in between that first round and the second round, the state updated the handbook. So we had to, in turn, update all of the plans and complete the environmental review. We did that, and that led to it coming to the board for adoption in September of 2019. And the SBCAG board at that point elected to continue adoption to a future date based off of concerns coming from the city of Goleta, Goleta's residents and property owners. So since then, or following the continuation, the city of Goleta hired an aviation consultant, Nick Johnson, who is on the Zoom call today, to recommend changes to the Santa Barbara Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan that would satisfy the concerns coming out of Goleta. And following the completion of that and getting a couple other things off of our plate, starting in fiscal year 2021, 2022, we began to budget some time to revisit the airport land use compatibility plans to work in the changes recommended by the city of Goleta, all leading to where we are today. This has been a very long process, and assuming we get adopted today, I consider it a very large accomplishment coming out of SBCAG, considering that this started about a dozen years ago. Next slide, to slide 6, I believe. Yeah, so now I just want to talk a little bit about some of the changes, which I will note that none of the changes are consequential. They were minor, add a word here, take a word out there. And it was a lot based off of comments coming out from Caltrans Division of Aeronautics. And there is one thing I want to touch on here, because there was some discussions with Caltrans related to one of the changes that recommended by the city of Goleta's aviation consultant was to reduce the safety zone coverage for the parallel north-south runways at Santa Barbara Airport. And there was a bit of disagreement on that between SBCAG and Goleta and Caltrans, with SBCAG and Goleta being on the same page, disagreeing with Caltrans' interpretation of what we had done. However, in the end, Caltrans supports the changes that have been made. The comment letters were included in the staff report as attachment 15, which documents that support for the changes that we made. So based on all of the comments we received and the minor edits that were completed, there are no outstanding issues. All the comments received have been addressed. Next slide. I believe we're up to number 7. So I want to talk a little bit about, I believe this and the next 2 slides are about Lompoc Airport, and this is related to the rural classification for Lompoc Airport. And according to the handbook, a way that a airport is classified as either rural, suburban, or urban is based off the level of development within the safety zones. And for the Lompoc Airport, within those safety zones, it's largely undeveloped, particularly at the ends of the runways. And the rural classification has nothing to do with the airport itself. It's the lands around the airport. So next slide, please. So we're up to slide 8. The 2 parcels, so the question became, does the rural classification for Lompoc Airport limit potential development of 2 parcels to the east of the airport? And they're on the slide, they're in the red boxes. The parcel to the left is in the city of Lompoc. The parcel to the right is in the county of Santa Barbara. I put on here, there are some flooding issues with these. The entirety of both parcels are within the flood hazard overlay, which was adopted by the Board of Supervisors as the 100-year floodplain. And then the northern portion of both parcels is in the FEMA floodway. And you could see in the lower image, there's the safety zones. The green polygon is safety zone 1, which is the runway protection zone. That's the one safety zone that comes out of federal law. And basically the only appropriate use in a runway protection zone is natural or working lands. And then the bulk of the other one is in safety zone 2. And I will say right now, both of these parcels are used for agriculture. The parcel on the left in the city of Lompoc is zoned as open space. The parcel on the right that's in the county of Santa Barbara is zoned as for agriculture. Next slide. I believe we're to number 8 now. In the future, I will number the slides. Yeah. So the safety zone 1, as I mentioned, it's the runway protection zone. That's the one controlled by the Federal Aviation Administration. And as I mentioned, the only appropriate use is natural or working lands. So the use of agriculture now is appropriate for the area. And then the safety zone 2, I wanted to just highlight the difference of if Lompoc Airport was classified as an urban airport or as a rural airport, and what's the difference and what's compatible with that. And again, it's based on what's currently there. Because these lands are undeveloped now, that's where the rural classification came from. In terms of housing in safety zone 2, there's no difference between the two. And before I get into this, let me qualify that in safety zone 2, because it's fairly stringent in terms of the compatible land uses, because it's pretty tight to the airport. Basically any development's going to have certain conditions applied. So it's when I say that yes, this is allowed, just note that it's a bit more nuanced than that. That there's certain conditions in terms of where it's sited or the intensity of the land use or the density of the land use. The second category was assembly facilities, which could be a community center or a church. And for rural, it's not a compatible land use. And for an urban airport, a small indoor facility is compatible. For the office, commercial service, and lodging category, there's uses compatible in both. The urban does provide a 500 square foot per facility benefit. For the industrial, manufacturing, and warehouse, they're basically the same. No significant difference between the two. For education or institutional uses, most of those uses are incompatible, whether it's rural or urban. However, the handbook does say that a small childcare facility is conditionally compatible for an urban one. And I believe that's based on, because for an urban environment, you're assuming that it's already developed. And then transportation, which would be roads or bike paths or sidewalks, communication, antennas, or other facilities or utilities. Most are allowed in both. And then finally, agriculture, and that's without buildings, so not greenhouses, but open land agriculture is similar and allowed in both. So that's the key differences between the urban and the rural designation. And just from the previous slide, I also highlighted both of these two parcels do have flooding issues. Next slide, please. I believe this is slide 10. So this is where we're asking you to include, enable us to correct a small error that actually was identified by City of Santa Maria staff. So SMX is the call sign for Santa Maria Airport. SBA is the call sign for Santa Barbara Airport. And it's in these two plans that we need to add 2 words. And I just want to use, so it's for regional shopping centers. And so Camino Real is a perfect example of how this is impacted. So Camino Real, which is a Costco, Home Depot in the city of Goleta, it's split between safety zone 2 and 4. It's an existing land use, so I'm only using it as an example. If something like that were to be built, how it was worded previously was said that you're only allowed to have 3,000 square feet of the property devoted to eating and drinking uses or restaurants. However, if you think about Camino Real, there's a series of probably 5 or 6 different restaurants in there. So what we're adding is per building. And really the purpose of this is to ensure that we don't concentrate people. Essentially, if there's going to be an aviation incident, we don't want 30,000 square feet of people sitting at dining tables in one space. If they're separated, similar to how Camino Real is, then that minimizes the risk. And that's why we need to add those 2 words per building, so it's not interpreted wrongly. And the next slide is the final slide, Andrew. And this is just a repeat of the actions that we're requesting today. Again, we're asking for adoption of the CEQA document, adoption of the resolutions, which adopt the plans, authorizing us to submit to Caltrans, and authorizing us to fix the small error that was identified in the, actually it says here SMX, it's Santa Maria and Santa Barbara airports. With that, I'm happy to take any questions, and Andrew is here to answer any technical questions.
All right, any questions of staff? South County? Anyone on Zoom? Director Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Osborne. Can you hear me okay?
Now we can, yes.
Okay, great. I'm sorry I missed part of the presentation, but a question I had for Mr. Becker. I know you went over the different uses and how they would differ between a rural or urban, but is there also a suburban classification? I think that was what was explained to me.
Yes, Director Nelson, there is a suburban classification which would split the difference. I just wanted to highlight through the presentation the kind of the polar ends of the two, and just to note that the differences are fairly minimal. And I think based on the concerns that you've mentioned in the past, the one thing that I can note is if there is ever a reason, and I think that's part of the benefit of having 5 plans instead of 1, is we can amend or develop a new plan for Lompoc if the situation ever arises that it's needed. But yes, there is a suburban. You could essentially split the difference. However, there's already between urban and rural fairly limited difference already.
So that was my question. First question. Second question is something I don't see on here is that the geometry changes based on suburban or urban, correct? I mean, it's different,
Andrew,
different area sizes.
Director Nelson, no, the geometry stays the same. It's just the compatibility of different land uses is slightly different between the classifications.
So that's different than our conversation previously, because the geometry and the lengths there in Lompoc and San Ynez are much greater than the urban ones, and that was explained to at least to me previously. That was in part because of the classification. So the geometry, you're saying, doesn't change at all,
No.
depending on it. Okay.
So Andrew is saying that no, it doesn't. I will say, and I think where this may have arisen is for the Santa Barbara airports, one of the things that the Goleta's aviation consultant did was change the template that is applied to the north-south runways. And if you're familiar with the Santa Barbara airport, that's the one that the small private planes fly in and out of. The commercial stuff and the bigger jets all fly on the east-west runway, the longer one. So that runway, I believe, is 1,180 feet long, and which would, if you just went purely by the handbook, you apply a certain template, which essentially has very large protection zones. However, based off of the use of that runway and the fact that it was just barely above the threshold for switching templates, Goleta's aviation consultant and Caltrans agreed that we apply small run or shorter runways template to the safety zones for that. So it's based off the fact that despite its length, it's used as a shorter runway.
Okay, that's helpful. So really, this is decision on what the classification is, and there's no additional geometry involved in the study. It's just whether you want to adopt a suburban standard or an urban standard or a rural standard.
Yes, and Andrew, can you go to the slide that shows the safety zones for Lompoc Airport? So I would highlight and I think the safety zone 3, which are the triangles that emanate north of the airport, you can see that typically they would, if you just went purely by the template, that safety zone 3 would also extend south of the safety zone 2 or south of the runway. So it would look uniform the whole way around. However, it's based off of flight patterns so we say no planes are coming in over the south of Lompoc or taking off and immediately turning south. So then we do not need the safety zones south of the runway because the operations and the practice of the pilots is to veer north, to come in from the north and to take off to the north.
Okay, thank you. So I think the issue was like my concern about those two parcels, and I think that was a little mischaracterization. My whole issue with this is that, it's been 30 years since we've updated the airport land use compatibility plan, and so it may be another 30 years from now. So what are we not? What should we think about now so that we're 20 years down the line, not looking back and going, I wish somebody would have done something back then. And so that's what I was looking at. I don't think there's any proposed projects or changes of land use proposed, but I think that's one of the charges that we have on this board is to be forward thinking. To me, it makes a lot more sense that Lompoc would be a suburban classification based on at least the community that surrounds it, and that does open up some additional land use options. And I was hoping from today that we'd actually continue that and go back and look at that a little bit further. I had a conversation with Director and Mayor Osborne. She was going to maybe potentially talk to staff and see what the implications would be of changing from a rural to maybe a suburban classification, what that would do for funding for the Lompoc Airport. So that was where I was heading on it. It's not a hill I necessarily need to die on, but it's something that I thought was at least prudent for us to look at and think about before adopting it.
Thank you, Director Nelson. This is Chair and Mayor Osborne. In discussions, we currently have nothing planned that would be a change to the surrounding use. A lot of that property is still federal property. Some is city property. We have a prevailing wind that does mean those patterns pretty much aren't going to change as far as how the airport is used. And a lot of the land around it is exactly that. It's floodplain. And we've seen proof of that the past couple of weeks as to how flooded they are. So my staff was of the opinion that because we can come back and make a request to change it, if we see that need or that request or that development actually occurring, it is something we can move forward on rather than changing anything right now, because there's nothing on the horizon that would cause the need for it at the moment. Any other questions or concerns about any of the plans from staff that from board directors that they want to ask staff before we go to public comment? All right, seeing no one, we will ask for public comment. Is there any public comment in South County?
Chair Osborne, we have one request from Mr. Peter Imhoff.
All right. Mr. Imhoff, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Chair and Directors. Peter Imhoff, Planning Director for the City of Goleta. I'm here to strongly support the SBCAG staff recommendation, and in particular, the adoption of the Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan for Santa Barbara Airport. These plans have been a long time in coming, and after many years in process, it is time to finally get them across the finish line. I'd like to thank SBCAG staff in particular for their close collaboration with us during this process, and to address the City of Goleta's comments and revisions, and for working to reach consensus with all of the stakeholders around a plan that acknowledges existing land uses within Goleta at the same time that it works to ensure the compatibility of future development with airport operations. Adoption of these plans is long overdue and will bring Santa Barbara County jurisdictions, including the City of Goleta, up to date with both state requirements and airport plans and operations as they exist on the ground and in the air today. So thank you very much. We encourage adoption.
Thank you. Any other public comment online?
Chair Osborne, I see Sarah Isa with her hand raised.
All right.
Allow her to talk.
Yes. Sarah, you have 3 minutes.
Madam Chair and Directors, good morning. I'm Sarah Isa, Santa Barbara Airport Capital Development Manager. The airport appreciates your consideration of Resolution 2302 today to adopt the ALUCP to replace the 1993 ALUCP. As you are aware, its adoption and approval are a long time in the making, and after much staff collaboration and coordination. We look forward to relying on the new document for land use compatibility determinations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Chair Osborne, Director Nelson has his hand raised.
All right. If there's no other comments, we'll take you back to Director Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Osborne. I just want to confirm with Mr. Becker just one last time that I think I used the term the geometry would not change. Would the distances of the geometry, would the the safety zones, would those change based on the classification? The size of them, I guess, is probably a more appropriate question.
Yeah, Director Nelson, I'm going to rely on Andrew Orfila, who's at the mic now.
Madam Chair, Director Nelson, Andrew Orfila here. So the geometries and the distances are really based on there's two factors that we use to develop the templates there. It's the distance or the length of the runway and the operations of Lompoc Airport. So I think Mike had mentioned that when we develop the criteria, we look at the surrounding land uses. But when we develop these templates for the safety zones, we're actually looking at what's going on at the airport. So as long as the airport operations are remaining the same in terms of it being a general aviation airport, that's what it is now, and the runway length remains the same, those templates are going to remain the same.
So to confirm that the classification isn't a element or a factor in that in any way.
Correct. The rural classification will not affect the zone geometries.
Thank you.
All right. Any other? Okay. If there are no other questions or comments from either boards or the public, we'll close public comment and bring it back
Chair,
for
I just
discussion.
want to report, Chair Osborne, that we did receive 2 public comment letters that were just distributed to the board prior to the meeting.
Thank you for that. I forgot about this.
Visit Santa Barbara and Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber.
They are attached to the agenda. I see that. All right. Thank you for that. All right. Any further board discussion?
Chair
If
Osborne?
there is none.
Chair
Yes.
Osborne, excuse me.
Yes.
I just wanted to make a minor comment, this is Director Capps. Just wanted to thank Mr. Becker for his presentation and just this is, I think, a lot about how we communicate to the public, and confess that when I read the PowerPoint, I was quite confused as a new director with all the acronyms and sort of the planner speak. So, but he did an excellent job of providing context and really explaining this. So I just encourage that kind of communication going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion on item 6C.
Hartman moves staff recommendation.
Friedman second.
Second.
Including the
Including
error.
the correction, the
Including the
two-word
error for the
correction.
change. I'm assuming that's what you meant, Director Hartman.
Yes, indeed.
All right. And Director Patino agrees with that. All right. So including the error correction, we have a motion and a second. A roll call vote, please.
Director Williams,
Aye.
Caps,
Aye.
Hartman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Lavanino,
Aye.
Infante,
Aye.
Julian, King,
Aye.
Patino,
Aye.
Parodi,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Friedman,
Aye.
and Chair Osborne.
Aye.
Motion passes 12-0.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, good work. I know that was a lot, and it's a big update, and we'll begin to potentially see some economics change in Lompoc, and if we do, we'll be back here. Any 1 minute reports? I will start with South County. Anyone have a 1 minute report in South County in the SBCAG room?
This is Director Hartman. It's not really a report, but I did reach out both to APCD and SBCAG to see if we can get the meetings coordinated on where they are every month on Thursday, so that with the new Brown Act requirements, we have quorum that has to meet in the central location. So if they're coordinated, I think that would make it easier for all of us.
Thank you for that. I know that Margie was working on that as well. So thank you for doing that. Anyone else online have any 1 minute reports?
Director Parodi has her hand raised.
All right, Director Parodi.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I just wanted to say that the city of Goleta has already initiated a general plan amendment and zoning amendment process to implement the new airport land use compatibility plan locally. So we are pursuing the implementations over the next 6 months. So I'm certainly glad that it went through. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone here in North County have a 1 minute report? Director Patino.
I'd just like to give a short report on what happened up here. We did have a lot of flooding on the northwest side of town. Everything drains there, but we have a retention basin which belongs to the county on the northwest side of town, and that was just about, well, it was overflowing, not just about, it was overflowing because it's going on the other side of Blosser Road. So the county put the pumps in there, we pumped it out and went down to the river. As you know, there's a lot of water running through the river now. Well, you wouldn't know, you don't guys come up that far north, but we had people living in the river that are no longer living in the river. And but unfortunately, a lot of that went down to Guadalupe. So they were severely impacted. We are looking at asking our congressional representative for monies, because we need a retention basin on the east side of the freeway so that this does not happen to us again. Because every time you pave over, that water has to go someplace because it's no longer percolating into the ground. So, but other than that, we cleaned out the channels, all the channels beforehand and during, and everyone. We have such great employees in the city of Santa Maria, so they've been working really, really hard to keep all that. But I don't think we've had any residents call in, because we've asked them to call in, let us know if there's been any flooding in their home or if any of the residents have been negatively impacted. And but maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe today they called in or yesterday. And but anyway, it's been very well handled in the city of Santa Maria.
I would say the same for Lompoc. We were very lucky that we're a full service city, and much of our staff have been working on reducing the branches that were about to fall, except for losing a very large stone pine on someone's car. Thankfully, we have insurance for that. Our riverbed did flood, and we have seen those that were living in it not only have to be rescued, but get pushed up into the community. But we have point in time count next week. So hopefully they will take advantage of all the support they're being offered. But again, I want to thank not just our public safety, but all our departments and the county for the work that they did. It was an unusual circumstance. I think there were lessons learned from 5 years ago that were really worked on. And we've seen some incidents in North County that we need to address. And it's unfortunate that it takes an emergency for us to see what needs to be done, but we should definitely be proactive about those. Any other 1-minute reports? All right.
Madam Chair,
seeing-
I'll just
Yeah.
put out there, because there was, a number of people impacted financially with damage across the county, that, now FEMA aid is available because of the disaster declaration that our Congressmember Salud Bahal was able to obtain from the president. And want to thank the governor and Assemblymember Greg Hart and Senator Monique Limon for their work to help as well. But the key thing for residents is that they can get essentially aid up to $36,000 based on their economic impact. And they, by going to disasterassistance.gov or 1-800-621-3362. Keep your receipts.
Thank you for that additional information. All right, we will go to Margie Kern for our executive director report.
Yes, Madam Chairperson, members of the board, I know you're running out of time and you have Air District meeting in an hour, so I'll keep this brief. Thank you for the e-bike awareness conversation. We're looking forward to having a great event tonight, and we are appreciating all the attention you're bringing to it. We do want to thank, on behalf of the SBCAG, we want to extend our sincere gratitude to all the frontline public works, Caltrans, and CHP personnel for their life-saving efforts during the recent storm events and preparing for our upcoming difficult weather. And also extend our appreciation to the transit operators in the county and the partners in SLO and Ventura counties who are working collaboratively in the region to remain ready to support our public safety. And I also want to let you know that I have been invited to participate in the interviews for the Caltrans District 5 director, and I'll be spending the day tomorrow in San Luis Obispo to do that. And then last but not least, we will be moving to a change in our meeting format. I plan to have an item on your next agenda to discuss that, the options under a non-COVID emergency situation. Council Susan McKenzie and I will tag team an item to give you the options of how we want to proceed and deal with having a quorum in one location and also having the Zoom capabilities for some members, and or doing something different where we post where everybody is and let them do it that way as well. So options are out there. There's different interpretations of the law that we want to bring to the board's attention and get your direction on how you want to proceed. So we'll make sure that that's an item on your agenda for your next meeting. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you. All right. Scott, Caltrans report.
Right. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Scott Eads here again with you today with Caltrans update. First, I want to talk a little bit about storm response efforts. We have activated our emergency operations centers statewide, been working with our local partners to respond and emergency response efforts as well, or emergency response providers, I should say. We've also been taking a number of steps in terms of how we're handling the response efforts. We are prioritizing staffing. We have more than 4,000 crew members working 12-hour shifts, sometimes more. And we're placing equipment at critical locations to try to prepare for additional flooding or be ready to address the flooding and mudslides in locations where we know they're more have a tendency to happen more frequently. And then, of course, we're monitoring bridges and have been doing so, all those things as the rivers rise and the flood flows have increased. With respect to city and county storm road damage, just want to remind everyone, our local assistance staff is already probably working with your staff. We're ready to process emergency funding and emergency project efforts to address the facilities that have been damaged due to the storms. That's particularly important on the local assistance side with federal aid funding. And then lastly, I wanted to, actually, it's not the last thing, but I did want to provide some updates on some road closures. So 154 is now open as of yesterday evening. And Highway 1, we do have a closure near the Gaviota Tunnel. It's still open with one lane. And we do not have an estimated opening time at this point, but the traffic can flow through there. You just need to recognize it will be constrained. And 166 is open all the way just a little bit beyond New Cayuma. So Kern County portion in Kern County is closed. We're monitoring a sinkhole condition out there, and we do not have a reopening time or reopening date at this time. And then in Ventura County, State Highway 33 is closed from Stubblefield Road to 166 due to a collapsed roadway, unstable slopes. We have some power lines that are down and slides. Don't have an opening time on that. And then 150 is also closed from the Ventura County Santa Barbara County line to Santa Ana Canyon Road. And again, a lot of different conditions there, no estimated reopening time at this point. And then finally, I just want to highlight Highway 1 in San Luis Obispo County and Monterey County. A good portion of that is closed. A lot of different events that have happened along the coast there. It's closed currently from Elephant Seal Vista in San Simeon to Lime Creek Bridge in Monterey County. And we're looking at several weeks at a minimum there to have that reopened. Last thing that I wanted to highlight is our Sustainable Transportation Planning Grants. The call for applications was released just a week ago on January 12th. And the final version of the grants application, whoops, just lost my notes here, of the guidelines was also posted at that time. Those are all online. You can go to dot.ca.gov and just type in the search bar Sustainable Transportation Planning Grants. You'll find a lot more information there. There's 3 grant categories this year. The first is a Sustainable Communities Grant. There's roughly $30 million available in funding. And then there's a new category called the Climate Adaptation Planning Grants, certainly relevant these days. There's $50 million available there. So that's a good chunk of money that really provides an opportunity to think about some of these areas where we're starting to see recurrent damages and how to address that going forward. And then strategic partnership grants at $4.5 million is also available. The applications for all these programs are due on March 9th. And there's a smart sheet portal that Caltrans is using to receive those applications. We also have a workshop that's being held in District 5 on January 26th. And it's from 9:30 to 11 a.m. And then headquarters is also looking at additional virtual grant application workshops late this month or early February. Don't have specific dates on those. That concludes my report. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Thank you for that thorough update on road closures. We really appreciate that. All right. Director Julian is unfortunately absent due to dealing with Guadalupe issues. So we don't have a Calvans board meeting update. So we will adjourn to the next meeting on February 16th, 2023. Thank you all.